point, say my own thanks to all of the staff team. We have a wonderful staff team. I mean, inevitably, there's always a little sort of churn, and I'm going to talk a bit about that, with people coming and going. But when I arrived here nearly 7 years ago, the then wardens said to me that my principal first job was to bring better cohesion to the staff team and, bring to build it. And there are little things we've done positively and constructively, but I just feel really blessed and grateful that the Lord has given us a team, both behind the scenes and up front, who work together really well. We actually have quite a lot of fun together. They occasionally laugh at my jokes, but it's costing me quite a lot these days. But, just generally pull together for the vision of the church, and I'm very grateful to that. Don't take it for granted, and I hope you're very grateful as well for the way that the team does pull together with all of that. So, thank you, Phil. My reports, I just usually give you verbally, but there'll be a little bit of written afterwards. But so, can I do a Chris Whitty? Next slide, please. I can get. Thank you. So, just a reminder, you're very, very familiar with this because we talk about it a lot, but it's just worth saying that this is still the sort of grid that guides what we do in terms of our ministry. So our vision is to be in the community, for the community, to the glory of God, intentionally saying that, a little bit like that model in Acts we saw this morning, Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, to the ends of the earth. So Virginia Water, the parish of Virginia Water, Staines, I don't know, England and mission beyond. We want to make sure that we are serving Virginia Water well first, which we're trying quite hard to do, and beyond. And then I'm not going to go through the 5 sub-points. Inevitably, they're sort of weighted sort of 1 to 5. The top one gets the most of our energy and the bottom one the least, but they're all important. So basically, if there are things that we're doing that don't fit in these 5 duo categories, then we shouldn't be doing them, because this is what we believe God has given us a vision to do in our community. And then practically, for every one of us, knowing Jesus and making Jesus known. So just a reminder that, we will keep returning back to that. And as we meet as a newly formed PCC on Tuesday, again, we'll remind ourselves that this is the vision and purpose we've given ourselves as a church. So I just want to say a little bit about the PCC and the current challenges in the Church of England at large. So it is just worth saying that the Church of England is going through really once-in-a-lifetime changes in terms of some of the decisions that it's made about what's called the LLF, or now the PLF, so the Living in Love and Faith, now the Prayers of Love and Faith, which are making their way through General Synod. We find ourselves as a leadership at odds with some of what the Church of England is proposing in terms of formally integrating blessings of same-sex relationships in the life of the church. And we also find it to be quite a big distraction from what we believe to our central vision and purpose, which is to reach the world with the good news of Jesus Christ. The House of Bishops met actually this past week, and they meet in order to firm up what will go on to the General Synod in July. And the 2 things which really confirm the trajectory that the Church of England is on, really, is the introduction of same-sex standalone services of blessing, which didn't go quite that far at the last General Synod, and also the removal of the ban on clergy entering into same-sex marriage and relationships. And those I'm speaking for myself here now. Personally, I feel that there's a slow erosion away from a clear, biblical, healthy perspective on how God believes that we should flourish. And also, the church is not in the business of wagging the finger at the world around and saying you should do this and should not do that. But the church does have to get its own house in order, that actually we're called to be holy because God is holy. And removing moral clarity over the things that we believe the Bible to be clear is, I think, challenging and difficult days. Now, I'm going to tell you why I think this is important in just a moment. And it is just worth saying that the PCC did pass a statement 18 months ago, basically holding the views that the church has always traditionally held, that the marriage is between one man and one woman exclusively and for life. And that's God's intention. He makes provision for failure, but that is God's intention. And that is the official line that the PCC holds. Now, the reason I start my report with that slightly depressing note is to say that we are actually very fortunate in this diocese to have two bishops who hold to an Orthodox view, and particularly our diocesan bishop, Bishop Andrew, who was here for confirmation just a few weeks back, was one of only 4 diocesan bishops who voted in a more traditionalist way at the General Synod just over a year ago. And therefore, personally, but also I believe as a church, we are both grateful and trying to support our diocesan bishop in the position that he's holding. However, it does mean that, I think many of us find ourselves a bit at odds, really, with the trajectory of the Church of England at large. And for me, there are a few things that I think we need to continue to consider. I mean, one is we, as a larger church in the diocese, are net contributors to the diocesan finance. In other words, we pay more into the centre than we get back. And at the moment, I think, in our diocese, that's a good thing to do, but finance is a challenging if you find yourself at odds. And as a PCC, we're going to start to talk about using what's called the Ephesian Fund that's been set up by the Church of England Evangelical Council, which is basically to say that you give to a separate charitable trust in order that they will give your money to where you think it should go. And many churches like us, who are paying all of our money that we're supposed to pay into the centre, are actually just starting to do that through the Ephesian Fund. And that is something that I want us to discuss as a PCC, just to make the statement that we want to make sure that gospel money goes towards gospel work. The second thing that, and I apologize if this is all totally new to you, the second thing is that we are aware that if the Church of England continues down a route where the majority of the congregation feel that they're at odds with the church, with the denomination as a whole, then let's suppose we felt that we couldn't stay in the Church of England but would go in like AMIA or GAFCON or something like that. The implications for Christchurch, and you'd never get the whole congregation to follow, but the implication of Christchurch is that you would walk away from this building and take whoever was wanting to come with you and go somewhere else. Don't misunderstand me. I'm not about to propose that we do that. However, I don't know where we'll be in 5, 10 plus years' time. So I do think we need to be talking about it. And I'm going to say 2 things that might well seem to be contradictory to you in a moment. The first thing is that the 2 properties that we own, one that we own and one that we nearly own, the house that Jeremy currently lives in and the house that we are just finishing buying on Bourne Road for a second worker. Now, the PCC cannot own those properties. They are held in charitable trust by the Diocesan Board of Finance as custodian trustees. Now, we can go and get them, although there is a bit of a process which the diocese has to approve. And one of the things I'd like to bring to the PCC is to move both of those trusts into a separate charitable trust that will be held for evangelical work in Virginia Water, which would run in sort of parallel to the parochial church council, but would mean that you would retain some property assets if the worst came to the worst. I apologize if I'm talking about things that are not particularly of interest to you, but this is the bigger picture that's important. So those are sort of 2 things really that the PCC are going to start talking about in this next term that you've just elected them to. Now, the thing that's slightly contradictory is that in talking to many of you, I do hear a desire to try and do something with this building. So, I mean, that visibly has been a great little baby step, hasn't it? Actually, not such a baby step. It's quite a big step, wasn't it, Roger? Um, but, you know, we've discussed building, but actually no significant money has been invested in this building for 20 years, really, to speak of. And the plans that are up on that wall, many of you won't have seen before. In actual fact, they were drawn up 4 years ago. Um, And the purpose behind these plans was to address the entrance area that has single glazed glass, which means that it's too hot in the summer, too cold in the winter, and for about 72 hours in the spring and in the autumn, it's a perfect temperature. And it means, in fact, that it's a very unusable space. Plus, we are frustrated that the building is often closed during the week, despite the fact there are staff working behind the scenes. And that we would like to make some more office space there with a bit more meeting room. We also feel that we desperately need to upgrade both the quantity and the quality of our toilets, and just make a little bit more room at the back for storage space. That's basically what that's looking at. So just flip between the three slides a little bit, if you will, forward. And so that's what it would look like on the outside. And then the next one, if that helps, that's the pigeon's view. But if you go back again to the first one, I am very conscious that we don't have the money to do this at the moment. But what I'd like to do is to start just hearing your views, really. Do you think it's sensible to spend some money on the building? If you had an opportunity, say if somebody gave you £500,000 in a legacy, is this where you would spend it? And we're going to leave these plans up for you to have a look at. I pick a figure of £500,000 out of the sky somewhat just on the grounds that the architect said 350 4 years ago. You usually put at least 10% on an architect's figure and then inflation. But, you know, we haven't even got that far. This is really just for a chance for you to look at it. So I'd love to hear your feedback. I'm very happy we spend 5 minutes talking about it now. If you want to make any comments, strong feelings, either direction or observations, but we're going to leave that up for a bit for you to start writing comments and just to feed your feedback to wardens and PCC and staff along the way. And it is just worth mentioning Rod's final point, really, which is that actually, you know, there is the general congregational giving, which we could always do with increasing, but there are the other ways which money comes our way. Legacies being perhaps the most significant, and that's always helpful if you remember that. But yeah, you know, we're not even yet discussing the question of whether we can afford it. We're asking the question, first of all, if we could afford it, is this what we would do? Thank you very much. Yep. Fine. Thank you. Good comment. Yeah.
I was thinking
Can I,
slightly.
sorry, can I just, sorry, we're not talking about extending the church in any way. It's simply that, well, we have spent a lot of money in the last 5 years. It's been on fixing the tower, on fixing the flat roof and so forth. And it's this inside that you look at and the office space that kind of are looking dated. Or, I mean, the office space is probably 80 years behind where it should be because they're stuck in the vestry there, which is not designed to be an office. So it's just about making it modern and fit for purpose. Uh, but you know, it is at this point we're just talking about: is this something that we want to do at some point?
Yep. Thank you, Betty.
I like the idea of a building extension, but I'm also thinking with a different hat. If there comes a point where we have to leave and have another building, and we did get access to £500,000, I kind of wish we had it in our trust fund that we could take with us.
Yeah, and that's the tricky bit.
Yeah.
Okay, and I mean I think I agree with Akil that this isn't going to happen. These scenarios that I've outlined are not going to happen immediately. We should always be prepared, I think, to act on conscience if we do need to do something differently. But I kind of feel that there's a danger that we get then hamstrung under what if, and that's why my proposal to the PCC is to discuss this, but also secure at least 2 property assets in a separate fund. Now, those of you who've been involved in these things, they're not straightforward because your terms of reference of those property assets is also important. You know, how you're going to make sure that continues well 50 years down the road. But I hear your point, and you know, they're important bits of feedback.
So I'll only talk about a context where that sort of thing doesn't happen. And I think and I will say this in other contexts as well, but I'll just say it for wider consumption. My quite strong view on the proposals is much in line with Rob's plan for purchasing of property for our cure, is that we should be guiding our thinking around the use of the building, not only in terms of what we need to do, but in making it available to the community and generating additional revenue streams for the country and to support the health of the church on an ongoing basis. So I think the work on the toilets is a great one because I wouldn't want to have a kids' party in the patio rooms at the moment, but I would if we had some nicer toilets for kids to go in. I think that's the sort of thing that can really help to support the health of the church going forward.
Thank you, Dave.
Yeah, just want to say on the issue of same-sex relationships, fully respect your view, Simon, and I know many, many people here, but just place the record that there are people who have a different view, and I'm one of them. I'm on the PCC. If anybody wants to talk to me about it, then please do.
Noted. Thank you, Rob.
It's in the position of raising finance. I suppose the church has a profile of the church in how many are young people going around to it. So, of course, the appeal to young people is plums and that sort of thing.
Thank you.
There's lots of religion around, Premier Radio, and you've also got various thought there. It's about 10 to 8 on Radio 4. That's all I have to say on my thoughts.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I mean, we we do try intentionally to reach the range of people we have in the congregation. It's always open for discussion. It's just worth saying, you might remember we had these focus groups earlier in the year specifically to ask that. Interestingly, I mean, it was a fairly self-selecting group, although we did invite a lot of people, to be honest. We heard more than 60 different contributions. Um, Largely felt that the shape of the service was about right, so the 8:30 is a bit more traditional. We do sing 2 hymns there. The 10:30 is a bit more of a blend, and we do sing some hymns now and again in that, so we do want to hear that and want to keep doing that. And then the evening's more informal, but you know, it's a fair point to try and make sure that we do provide something that everybody can access. Okay, this is not the final word on buildings, but we can come back to it. So just penultimately, for me, staff changes. So we do expect significant change this summer. So Michael, who's currently pressing the buttons at the back there, will leave by September. And that is because he has gone through the Church of England selection process, what's called the Stage 2, used to be called the Bishop's Advisory Panel, been accepted for ordination in the Church of England, and is currently exploring theological colleges with a view to moving over in September. And Megan is actually going through the same process, but she's a couple of months behind and has her Stage 2 selection in the 10th of June. So do pray for her on that, but offering herself, I would be very surprised if the Church of England doesn't choose to accept Megan. So similarly, we are expecting Megan to move on, and we can have another conversation if she doesn't want to, but this is, I try not to say anything that she hasn't said to me already, but we're expecting Megan to move on. However, so let's just congratulate Megan on planning for the autumn is a challenge, because in actual fact, between the two of them, they do 4 quarter-time jobs. So Michael looks after student and young adult work and also website, social media, and all that kind of thing. And Megan looks after students, a little bit young adult work, but also helps facilitate Sunday worship with a lot behind the scenes work there as well. So if the two of them leave in September, we've got a number of roles that will need filling. However, until I've got vacancies, it's quite difficult really to very proactively go about filling. But we are exploring those conversations. This is not the final end bit of the process, but we have agreed at the PCC that we will seek to appoint 1, possibly 2, what we're calling ministry assistants, as what used to be known as an intern or apprentice. And that is somebody who would spend a third of their time just helping with general building turnaround and grunt work in the life of the church, a third of their time being involved in one aspect of ministry, and then a third of their time studying in some area of Christian ministry and theology. And that we would pay them very little, basically, but enough to attract them, we hope. And also, there is an opportunity for them to have accommodation in the area through a generous hospitality from a congregation member. So that is what we're planning for the autumn. It's not a sufficient answer. In fact, the PC still need to talk about the vacancies that are coming up. But could you just pray for them and also for the staff team with quite a bit of change going on, and just to make sure that we are well equipped as we go into the autumn as well. So then just finally, we've been talking and thinking a lot about the theme of revival, which we were on this morning again, and we've had some sermons on some of these key texts, and Habakkuk's coming up in a few weeks. Continuing to, to pray that God would be merciful to our country and to our land, that he would revive us. And that will continue to be our theme. I think that it's been very good for us to engage with some of what's going on wider in England and in the wider world, but also to be very, very prayerful for God to bring revival. And can I encourage you to be engaged in praying for that? Could I encourage you, please, to pray for the leadership of this church, both elected members on PCC and wardens, the staff team, for all who serve in our Connect groups and beyond, that we would just be wise in the time that God has freed us up to help lead you. This year, 2024, will be the 35th year since I was ordained, and the 35th year since Carrie and I got married. So Carrie and I have been at it together for 35 years. Did I say 34? 35 years, which is actually rather a long time, and I'm grateful for that. I don't think we're going to have any big jamboree to celebrate either being ordained for 35 years or married for 35 years, but thank you, Carrie, for being alongside in all of this, and for your love and care as a church family in everything that goes on in the life of the church. So here endeth the APCM, and I'm going to just close this off with prayer. Father God, thank you for your blessing to us as a church. Lord, and just in so many ways, the people who we know and love, who are family members in this church, for the blessing of Merle and her wonderful legacy. Lord, for the opportunities that we have to reach you in this part of the world, and then also to send off others to train for ministry elsewhere, Lord, and just that constant stream through. And we do pray, Lord, for the changes that are going on in the wider church, but also in the local church. We ask for your wisdom, Lord, and for your grace, and we ask that you would continue to build this church to your honor and praise, Lord, so that you might get all the glory. In Jesus' name, amen.